Currently, the Boston Celtics hold a record of 18-17, putting them at 4th in the Eastern Conference. A brief season review. Thus far, their season has been defined by inconsistency. It's been up and down, and injuries kind of derailed their season from the beginning. Kemba Walker started the season recovering from an injury that was ailing him last year. Tatum went out due to COVID protocols and then another knee injury. And then Kemba Walker returned but has some rust to shake off, so that kind of threw off their consistency as well. And then Marcus Smart, who's kind of really the glue guy for the Boston Celtics over the past 2 or 3 years, he suffered a calf injury and he's still recovering from that. He'll probably be back sometime after the All-Star break, hopefully for them. Now to talk about some specific players, let's start with their top performers, Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. This year, Tatum is averaging 25 points per game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists on 44% from the field and 37% from 3. One thing to note is that his field goal percentage is down from last year. I mainly contribute it to a couple of things, or this one major thing. He's attacking the rim less and he's settling for more floaters and in-between shots. This has kind of been a knock on Tatum's game for the past 2 years as he's hit all-stardom. He has a tendency to kind of want to finish around the rim with finesse instead of taking on the contact from the rim protector and either finishing through the contact with a layup or at least drawing a foul. His three-point percentage is also a bit down compared to last year, mainly because he's taking more unassisted three-point shots, like off of his own creation, and that can be attributed to him just gravitating towards those shots more, and also the missing playmakers from the Celtics lineup throughout the season. Kemba Walker through the first part of the first half of the season, and then Marcus Smart getting injured towards the latter half of the first part of the season. Even though his efficiency is a bit down, his points per game has still improved, his assists per game has still improved, and he's still great on the defensive end. And in a lot of people's opinion, in order for him to progress to superstardom, his passing will need to continue to improve in order for him to make other players around him better. That's something that's key for being a superstar, the ability to uplift the lesser players on your team. Now we got to talk about Jalen Brown, who's having a breakout year, 25.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 4 assists on 49.5% from the field and 38.5% from 3. Wow. Jalen Brown continues to improve every year. This year has been no different. His stats have increased across the board, plus 5 points per game. He's doubled his assists per game. His field goal percentage and 3-point percentage has increased, and he's still an elite defender. He's a definitive 3-level scorer because he thrives in basically every spot at every distance on the court. So now, with Jalen Brown playing like this, it's an honest question. Who's better right now, Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown? I want to get back to the passing. His improvement as a passer is a great sign, but similar to Tatum, continued improvement in that aspect is another thing that can take him to superstardom as well. I want to briefly talk about Kemba and Marcus Smart, like I said, they've been injured at different times in the season and haven't been in the rotation. Kemba's starting to get back into his groove after recovery. He started off the season really slow and breaking a lot of shots and just not getting open as much as we expect him to when he's full health. But he is starting to get back to that normal Kemba Walker that we do see. And he's their best pick and roll guy when he is at full strength because he's so quick, so crafty, so slippery around the rim. He's their best guy at getting into the paint, beating the primary defender, getting into the paint and drawing help. He's their best guy at doing that. Probably going forward, he's going to be their third scoring option behind Tatum and Jaylen. That's wild. Kemba Walker as a third scoring option. That's something we've never really seen. And Kemba Walker's never really been in that role. He's always been the number one guy, and his efficiency has reflected that. But I think Kemba in a definitive third option role should be a lot more efficient going forward. And then for Marcus Smart, he's been the Celtics' best passer over the past couple of years, and he's also the team's most tenacious defender. You can argue that Tatum or Jaylen are better defenders. You can argue that, but Smart is the guy that they throw at the opposing team's best offensive player because he always has the energy on that end and he always takes the defensive challenge. And like I said, he should be coming back soon, sometime after the All-Star break. His return, you would expect, would help Boston's current mediocre defense, which we'll talk about basically right now as we move into talking about the team as a whole. Offensive rating, they're 13th. A solid rating when you consider all the ins and outs of players coming back into and out of the lineup. The offense should start to improve and get back into the top third of the league, with Kemba being in the lineup for the remainder of the season and Marcus Smart's passing returning to the lineup sometime soon as well. As for their defensive rating, they're 16th. Two of their best defenders have been out in and out of the lineup, Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart. They're starting a two big lineup in terms of Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice, which is something that Brad Stevens hasn't done over recent years. He's always had a small ball power forward, or like a small forward playing the four, and one big man. So this is kind of new for him recently. And neither of Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice are like a big dynamic rim protector. At least Daniel Tice is decent on switches, but Tristan Thompson isn't as good at switching onto guards as Daniel Tice is. So that kind of makes their defensive versatility a bit less, at least less than they've had in the past with Tatum at the four. And then other than that, like besides just making the excuse that Marcus Smart and Tatum have been injured, they've just not been as good on the defensive end, not showing as much effort, in my opinion, in the games that I've seen. They just haven't been as good as we've seen a Brad Stevens coached defense in past years. Some other notable stats to pay attention to: they're 27th in assists per game. That mainly has to do with a lot of ISO ball between Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, and time missing from their top two facilitators, Kemba and Marcus Smart. And then the point guards off the bench, Jeff Teague and Peyton Pritchard. Teague can't really break down defenses like he used to, so he's not really facilitating at a terrific rate. And then Peyton Pritchard has been really good for them, but he's not like a very dynamic passer. He'll bring the ball up and get the offense into the flow, but he's not really going to make plays like that for your team at this point in his career. Let's get into strengths and weaknesses for Boston. As for strengths, perimeter offense is a big one because of shot creation and paint penetration. They have three elite scorers that can challenge great defenders in Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Jalen Brown. Most teams don't really have that. Not even a lot of the elite contending teams have that. Three players that can get to the rim and beat opposing defenses and hit shots consistently over great defenders. They have three of those guys. And then they have four players that can get to the rim and either finish or draw help and make a kickout pass. Four perimeter-oriented players in Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. The perimeter offense has been the staple of Boston over these past 2 years because they've had these lineups where they have the small ball four, a perimeter-oriented small ball four, and three other wing/guards that do exactly that. They take advantage of their strength on the perimeter. And I think this is the philosophy or just point of emphasis for Boston over the past couple of years, just being very perimeter-oriented. I think at full health, you insert Marcus Smart back into the starting lineup and you bench either Tristan Thompson or Daniel Tice, and you go back to that perimeter-oriented approach. Another strength is their perimeter defense. At full health, they have three elite level perimeter defenders with a lot of versatility and switchability. Getting into some major weaknesses, obviously dynamic rim protection. They've never really had that athletic center that can just block shots when you least expect that. That's been the case with Boston for the past 2 years. They've made it work with like Daniel Tice there, but like elite level slashers won't really be afraid of taking on Daniel Tice and Tristan Thompson at the rim. Like in the Eastern Conference, your high level slashers are Giannis, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler. They're not really going to be afraid of taking on Daniel Tice in the air. Like either if it's Giannis and KD, they probably can just finish over him. Or if it's James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Jimmy Butler, they could finish around him with finesse, or most likely will draw a foul on him because Daniel Tice is pretty foul prone, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, he's not really the most intimidating presence down there. Like Rudy Gobert, Miles Turner, Joel Embiid, those are all guys that kind of scare perimeter-oriented players from slashing to the rim just because they're so impactful down there. Daniel Tice just doesn't have that same effect. And then elite level post scorers, they'll be really confident scoring down there as well. We've seen time in and time out Embiid just dominate Daniel Tice. Giannis will do the same. Domantas Sabonis will do the same thing as well. And then for bench scoring, they don't really have a go-to sixth man scorer. It's more so done by committee. Peyton Pritchard, he's a savvy young guard, good shooter. He's hit some big shots in big time moments for them. Robert Williams, the Time Lord, he's a very athletic, big rim runner, pick and roll threat. Probably their most dynamic rim protector, but he doesn't get starting minutes. Jeff Teague is a good backup point guard, shooting well from the three-point. He's a decent playmaker, kind of struggling from the field in general. And they have a bunch of big forwards that compete defensively and you hope can hit a three-point shot when they're open in Semi Ojeleye and Grant Williams. But they don't really have that go-to sixth-man scorer off the bench, so that could be something that kind of haunts them a little bit. So are they going to add somebody or add something in the trade market? What are some rumors that are floating around for Boston if they want to get a high-level big man? Nikola Vucevic has been linked to them recently. I mean, that doesn't really help you defensively, but that gives you somebody who's more of a low post presence, and they don't really have a low post presence at all on the offensive end. They go to Tristan Thompson sometimes when he has a switch, but he just looks clumsy down there a lot. Jeremy Grant has been linked to them as well, a versatile all-around forward who's had a breakout year thus far, but I don't know if Detroit wants to trade him. Those are the only two guys I've seen that are linked to the Celtics, but I mean, for them, who are you trading? I know they have a $27 million exception. I guess they could pair that with some first round picks in the future. That would probably be the trade for Nikola Vucevic, a $27 million exception and some picks, but I don't really know if Orlando wants to part ways with Vucevic because they like just competing all the time. And then for Jeremy Grant, what? Are you giving away Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and Aaron Nesmith? I think the Boston Celtics fandom would just riot if you traded away Marcus Smart, so I don't really know how they'd get a trade done for those two players, but we'll see what Danny Ainge, if he actually pulls the trigger at the trade deadline this time, or if he's just going to be in the rumor mill for the entirety without doing anything. But projecting forward for the Celtics, I think they'll finish in the 4th seed, and I think they'll have a second round elimination finish in the postseason. The Celtics are a much better team than their record suggests. I think as they continue to get healthy, they'll start to hang more W's on the board. Seeds 4 through 8 are basically up for grabs in the East, since those teams are very close in terms of record, and I expect the Celtics to establish themselves as the best team in that bunch, while remaining outside the conference's elite 3 teams, the Nets, 76ers, and Bucks.